Hello, good morning and evening. Thank you for joining us in our sustainability certifications in the food and beverage and forestry industry today, July 2nd, 2024. I am your host, Guillermo Serra, Head of Sales for EMEA at Agritask, based from Barcelona. Agritask is a leading software as a service crop supply intelligence company, providing visibility into yield, quality, and sustainability of crop supply for food and beverage, forestry, and cotton companies worldwide. Founded in 2010, we were among the first software as a service agronomy solutions in the market. Warm welcome to the General Director for DACH at the Control Union Global, Juan Matias Garcia, who is joining us from Berlin, Germany. Control Union is a leading international company that has been serving the commodity market since 1920. With a presence in over 70 countries, Control Union offers a full range of services, including logistics, inspections, certifications, and collateral management. Also, a warm welcome to the Head of Standards and Integrity at PEFC International, Rob Shaw, who's joining us from Evanton, Scotland. PEFC was founded in 1999. Over the years, PEFC has grown to become the largest forest certification system in the world. The PEFC system is a chain of custody certification that covers all those involved in the forest and wood industry, from tree nurseries all the way to timber retailers. We will start with a short introduction by Juan from Control Union, followed by Rob on PEFC, and shortly after, we will start our roundtable discussion. Welcome, Juan. Welcome, Rob.
Thank you.
Thank you. I would start with my presentation. It's uploading. Okay. Good. I will be short and precise. I will try to be short and precise. Okay, Control Union, we are a group with 124 years experience, starting delivering inspections in Rotterdam port. Since then, we increase our markets, and we are working now in 76 countries worldwide. You can see some pictures. We are focused on on food, on aquaculture and fisheries, forestry, biofuel and biomass, textile, energy, and agriculture. We are accredited from several accreditation bodies. The accreditation body is the entity who is controlling us, so we cannot say we deliver a certificate or a scheme certification if we are not accredited, if we are not controlled from an accreditation body. And we deliver inside our certification activities, administrative checks, due diligence, training, development, reporting, tracking, and other kind of certification services. We are in food and sustainability, focused on organic agriculture, on sustainability, fisheries and aquaculture, good agricultural practices. We deliver, for example, Global Gap accreditation. That certification is one of the most or the longest schemes for agriculture, fisheries, sustainability, for Forest Alliance, for ASPO, also very known in the market, and also organic agriculture. Certification process, I would be short and go faster to the explanation. We need to have one scheme on one side, and then based on this scheme, we can check, we can make the audit to the company, to the client, into your crop or your facility, to check that you are fulfilling the request from the scheme, and then based on this fulfillment of the scheme requirements, we can deliver a certificate, or based on the audit report, of course, we would say you don't fulfill the request from the scheme. I think from my side it would be the quick and short presentation about certification as a certification body. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Juan. Rob?
Yes, thanks, Juan. Yeah. So I also have a few slides to show as well. I'll be quite brief. So I joined PEFC International in November 2023 to fulfill an integrity role, and I'm now working with integrity and a standards team. And to explain, PEFC is the program for the endorsement of forest certification. So we are now the biggest voluntary certification scheme in forestry and forestry related products. We were born in Europe. We were founded in 1999, and we're celebrating this year, in fact, last week, our 25th anniversary. So we are the standard setting body. So we set standards for sustainable forest management and chain of custody. And we work as an umbrella organization, recognizing and assessing and endorsing national forestry certification systems in over 45 countries. So the way our schemes work is that in the countries where we have an endorsed national system, there is a sustainable forest management standard and a whole set of procedures. And in each of the countries where we operate, we have a legal entity. So, for example, PEFC Germany, PEFC France, and around the world, some of these organizations have different names. So in North America, the Sustainable Forestry Initiative is one of the PEFC family organizations. So on the forestry side, they run their own systems, and the staff in Geneva in our international office and our external consultants will assess these schemes and make sure that they meet our international standards, and then we officially endorse them. And then the timber and the non-timber forest products coming out of these forests are treated as certified. And as Juan was explaining, the certification is done by certification bodies who are in turn controlled by accreditation bodies. And PEFC is a member of the International Accreditation Forum, the IAF. So we operate to IAF and ISO standards within third-party certification. When the logs or the non-timber forest products leave these forests, or if the forests aren't certified, then both of those types of materials enter the supply chain, and then we move to our other global system, chain of custody certification, which is where material is tracked and traced through changes in size and shape to become the products which people use. And in the food and drink sector, obviously this would be especially interesting for things like packaging and coffee cups, and also transport packaging and pallets and other materials associated with those industries. And as we all know, the move away from plastics in the last few years and the push for more sustainability means there's been a huge increase in the number of recyclable and renewable packaging types for the food and beverage industry. So we've seen a huge upturn in certifications in that industry, particularly after the pandemic. So we have a global presence, and you can see on the map there all the countries which we operate in. And we still have a long way to go, because only 16% of the world's, only about 12%, I think, of the world's forests are certified. And the two big schemes are FSC, that's Forest Stewardship Council, and ourselves, PEFC. So you can see in the colored graph in the left-hand side there that some forests are certified to both FSC and PEFC, and then other forests are certified only to PEFC or to FSC. A lot of the world's productive plantation forests are certified, but much of the tropical developing world is still yet to be certified. And you can see that in Africa, there is a big task still to do in terms of developing our certification offering. We are very much focused this year on EUDR, the European Union Deforestation Regulations, and so we've been building that compatibility into our schemes. But going forwards, we have other initiatives working on carbon and other sustainability topics to go forwards with. And that concludes my slides.
Thank you, Rob. Thank you, Juan. We will start with the roundtable discussion now, and I would like to first address a question with Juan. What are the key steps and challenges involved in obtaining a sustainability certification?
Well, you need to be well prepared to get the certification audit, and yeah, let's say that it is not always the case because the auditors come to the crop, come to the site, and they find out critical nonconformities. And when they find out critical nonconformities, it means the certification cannot be fulfilled, and then yeah, the client, the company needs to improve its situation in, let's say, in a period usually around 2 months. If they are well prepared, then usually they are some non-conformities and non-critical non-conformities. Then it is possible to fix these non-critical non-conformities in a longer period, usually 3 months, and then yeah, the company gets the certification or the certification decision in a positive way. It's always a matter how the company, how the crop is prepared to get the audit.
Understood. Interesting. So you're referring mainly to food products in this case, right?
Yes.
Understood.
Food products, let's say, when you want to get one sustainability certification, whatever you do, food, textile, forest, and Rob, please correct me. Whatever you want to certify, you need to have one good management of this sustainability certification in your crop, in your food factory, in your textile factory, wherever it is, and then you can apply for the certification. And yeah, let's say that sometimes given the market pressure, some people think that you can do other way around. Okay, I get the certificate, and then after that, I can make the management of the sustainability certification. Then it doesn't run.
Understood, Juan. How will that apply to forestry, Rob? Is it similar path that Juan mentioned in regards to the steps and challenges involving sustainability certification for forestry?
Yes, very similar. Before I joined PEFC, I worked for a large certification body for 8 years, and I was a forest management and chain of custody auditor. So certifying forests very much depends on the national context, and we need to strike a balance within our standards between economic, ecological, and social factors. So, for example, I've audited in South Africa, where to achieve certificates, there's sometimes lots of work to do with local communities. There are employment issues around employing local people, and there are other economic pressures which impose on the forest. In Indonesia, I've audited in tropical primary forest, and so you have a lot of biodiversity issues and species issues, for example, presence of orangutans, and roading issues to deal with and local people. And then in countries like Scotland, you can have issues such as very high rainfall and steep slopes. So it very much depends on the type of forest, the people living in or near the forest, and the economic issues around the forest. So, but the main thing is for the companies who wish to become certified to understand the standard, make sure they have competent people in a position of authority and control, and then the people who are at the critical control points in the process are adequately trained, because quite a lot of certification and chain of custody is around controlling the material, the product, or the raw materials through the supply chain system, which in forestry can be very complex, especially when you're turning wood into paper or cardboard or packaging, for example.
Understood. Thank you. Thank you, Rob. Thank you, Juan. A lot of our participants today come from private companies. So I do have a question related to what is the biggest challenge they face in obtaining certifications. And I think here, Juan, maybe you can give examples on certain verticals, like maybe palm oil, or maybe some products that you have faced the biggest challenges for these private companies to become compliant. What do you think these challenges are, and which verticals of products will you find the biggest challenges?
Well, if we take palm oil, it's clear that you need to control your entire supply chain from the beginning, from the producer, probably in Indonesia where you are sitting now, or in the region, Southeast Asia, and then you can have the proper management of the entire process from the beginning. And the biggest challenge is given the current longer supply chains all kind of industries are facing. In some cases, it's difficult to monitor, to control where the product starts, where the process starts, and when the process goes after your your part of the process. And yeah, this is not easy, neither for the private companies, neither for the certification bodies, nor for the scheme owners in some cases. And yeah, this is I would say a challenge for all of us.
Thank you, Juan. Rob, where do you find the biggest challenges, let's say not only for private companies, but in terms of regions? Where do you think are the hardest regions or the most complicated regions to collect this information necessary for certification?
Well, I think the biggest pressure right now in 2024 is the European Union deforestation regulations, which captures lots of forest risk commodities related to the food and beverage industry, and also around the packaging industry as well. And the biggest challenge is as Juan was saying, was obtaining the data and then sharing the data. And so supply chain traceability and supply chain visibility is becoming much more critical. And where you have complex supply chains, which you often do in forestry, and they are global, there are huge data sets now to gather and manage. So we need good technology solutions around that. And it surprises me that even now in July of 2024, there are lots of companies who still are not prepared for EUDR, especially outside the European Union. And so I think they need to educate themselves in terms of what's required. And that's why we're busy aligning both our forest management standard and our chain of custody standard to be aligned with the EUDR requirements. And it's going to be a tough act, but we need to be ready for the 31st of December.
That's a great point, Rob. I've got to meet a lot of prospects from our side discussing the EUDR, and we see different levels of maturity when it comes to their understanding of the EUDR. And frankly, I'm a little concerned, that we may arrive to Q4 and some of them will not be ready. Especially the smaller companies that maybe don't have the access to information as some of the larger companies do. Now, I want to take a step back and say, what will be the role of technology and digital platforms, let's say like our company AgriTask or other digital solutions, including the digital workflows that you work with, in supporting the certification process? How detrimental is this for the process? How important is this? Juan?
Well, I think this is a key factor now, not in the future now, because with the technological solutions, the client, the company can know where the product starts, where the process starts, and of course, for the rest of players on the process, this is very important. They can have the traceability for the entire process, and for the certification body, of course, it would be in some cases it is already now let's say, best option to know, to identify how the process is running. Where does it start and how does it continue and where does it finish? Until some years, or in some cases, it is not yet clear. With some of the technological solutions that we have today, it is possible to at least to close the circle, to know better of the entire process.
Thank you, Juan. Rob, how do you see the influence of technology in this? And in your case, I understand the chain of custody is a very in-depth level of traceability. So I guess that technology plays a key role in your certification scheme and plays a key role in finding out where you're sourcing your forestry products. So could you develop a bit further on that?
Yes, I can. In actual fact, voluntary forestry certification is behind the curve on digitalization. And I think the European Union deforestation regulations will be a catalyst. So this is operating at different levels. So the certification bodies themselves need to digitize the auditing process. And that's a big challenge because some of the standards are very complex. But at the moment, there's a lot of very useful information being lost in manual certification processes where reports are written in different formats by different certification bodies, and the information kind of goes missing or isn't easily shareable. And that's the same challenge for PEFC as the scheme owner. So one of the reasons I've been brought into the job is to try and look at a journey for integrity and data into the future, where we become much more digital in our thinking. And the future seems to be, in other sectors, things like digital passports for products, looking at other attributes such as embodied carbon, ingredients, social and ecological issues associated with the raw materials or the products. So I think there's a whole journey for us all to go on over the next 5 years, trying to obtain this data for raw materials and products, but then make that data flow through the system. And it's a huge challenge. But if we don't take up that challenge, then we risk adding too much cost to audits, and also auditors spending too much time doing manual tasks, whereas the auditors could be delivering a higher value product if they have good technology to support their auditing process. And as a previous auditor myself, I have huge sympathies for that. It's easy for me to say all of this. It's very hard to actually deliver this into the real world. So yeah, sorry for the long answer, but it's a big challenge. So.
Great. Thank you. I'm sure that our participants today are really eager to learn more about this journey for certification. Now, my question is, could you share some examples of companies, associations, cooperatives, government bodies that have successfully implemented sustainability certifications, and what is the impact after implementing these certifications in their day-to-day operations and overall in their sustainability strategy? Juan, do you have any examples on this that you could share with us?
Well, I can tell you some examples from organic food, for example, that it's, let's say, a clear model for sustainability. I can tell you about cocoa companies also managing with Aerospeo and for Rainforest Alliance, what they are doing, or with the scheme from ROP, PFC also. So it's not that we are going to do advertisement, it's just a fact. Usually they improve into their environmental KPIs, what they are producing as a waste, producing as not to be used materials, or not to be used wastes, and also about what they are consuming, from water to raw materials and so on. I could give you more detailed figures, of course, given the confidentiality of the clients. I cannot do it. It's a good exercise is if you ask companies already certified with sustainability certifications, how did they get the advantages to have it. Not only in the sales part, that there is also a interesting win, but also in their daily business or in the operational business. What do they have in the positive way?
Great. How would that apply to forestry companies, Rob? And at your experience seeing private companies, cooperatives, associations, a little bit of the before, during, and after the implementation process, and looking back, what have they gained by getting certified and joining this process?
Yeah, certainly. I mean, at the larger end of the system, you have quite big global companies who operate business to consumer sales. And so there, the branding which goes around the products becomes very important, because having a PEFC logo on a product, does give the consumers confidence, and the logo is becoming more and more known. And the forest management reports end up quite often in the public domain. So personally, myself, I've audited companies such as Navigator in Portugal and Sappi and Mondi in South Africa. And these companies really take to heart the sustainability seriously, and they use the third-party auditing as an improvement tool to make sure that all their staff are understanding the systems and they're actually delivering on the ground. But the big companies within forestry are then supplied by a whole range of chain of custody suppliers and also smaller woodland owners. And we put a huge emphasis in PEFC on what's called group certification, so that smallholders can group together, especially in the economic south, and benefit from economies of scale in terms of organization and operation. So that's a really good way to link up supply chains, but also to get the sustainability message back up the supply chain to those forests. And what we're trying to do is we're trying to promote responsible forest management and promote sustainability, because our biggest impact is in protecting, preserving, and enhancing those forests for all the reasons why forests are now so important to everybody.
Thank you, Rob. We have a question from our attendees right now, from Dr. Ana Blanco. She's asking if could sustainability be implicit in other standards, or do you think that independent standards are essential? Juan, what is your take on this? What do you think about this question?
Well, standards need to be independent if they are standards, or if they are good standards. If one standard is not independent, there is no standard, there is no certification. It's just a part of one business or part of one industry. Saying that, also it's clear that sustainability is present in, I would say, in most of the current standards, somehow, in some cases with environmental parts of the standard, in some cases with social parts of the standard, in some cases with work safety standards, is, let's say, spread in all the standards. And when we talk about sustainability certification standards, we are more focused on standards which are only for sustainability, only focus on sustainability, like, for example, PEFC. Those sustainability standards are growing, are relatively new. If you compare with standards from 30, 40 years, sustainability standards are relatively new. And in this way, if you want to be with only sustainability standard, you need to go to one of those sustainability standards.
Understood, Juan. Rob, do you have a take on this question? Could sustainability be implicit in other standards, or do you think that independent standards are essential?
I have a different take on that, because the PEFC standards themselves are built on related ISO standards. And we find that medium-sized and larger companies in our sector will often run integrated management systems. and that's very common. In my previous career, that's what I did. I ran a very big company, and I ran an integrated management system with quality, environment, and safety, and then forestry certification over the top of all of that. So it is possible to integrate solutions within companies to meet different standards and different certification schemes. Within our PEFC forestry scheme, we have a complete balance of ecology, social and economic and health and safety issues built into the standards. So as Juan was saying, by definition, we are addressing all of those issues. I think the future for us to look at is more mutual recognition of other related standards. So if a company is meeting, for example, an international health and safety standard or an international social standard, then we need to find efficiencies here to prevent multiple audits of companies where the auditors are always asking the same questions, because then companies get audit fatigue, and that's not a good thing, which is not meant to criticize Control Union, of course, because obviously that's their job, is to audit people, but audits need to be efficient, and that will then give people more buy-in to the concept. So.
Thank you, Rob. I wanted to dive into the next question, which is, many companies are starting their journey towards sustainability. What advice would you give to these companies? How can they lay out this roadmap of certification? Because, of course, there's a lot of information that you need to provide. There's a lot of, like Rob said at the beginning, you need to be ready. You need to have leadership to take on this project. Or like Juan said, you need to be organized. You need to know what is the goal that you're trying to follow. So let's assume that we're starting a new company now, right? We're starting a new company that is producing palm oil, and on the side, we're producing a little bit of forestry products. Juan, how would you best take that, and what will be the requirements, or how can you develop a checklist to start your certification journey?
Well, first of all, I would say you would need to know your environmental impacts, your sustainability impacts. How are you impacting on your arounds and in the society? And then you can have one idea, okay, I need to go for a standard which covers our impacts. Today we talk about environment ESG, environmental, social, and governance area. That then you can put all the three legs, let's say, of the ESG together, and then you can start to work on your sustainability strategy, work in an action plan. What do you want to achieve? Which kind of sustainability certification you want to achieve? And be very realistic. It's not that you go and you buy one sustainability certification in 3 months. If you start today and the company has, let's say, longer than 10 years, I would say it would take some months or at least 1 year until you are ready to apply for a sustainability certification with the good options to get it.
Thank you for the clarity, Juan. I think that's very spot on as a roadmap on how to get certified and how to start this certification sustainability journey. How would that apply to forestry, Rob? Would it be similar to what Juan mentioned, or there's some uniqueness in managing forestry over, let's say, food products?
It's a very similar approach. It would be slightly different if it was forestry looking for forest management certification of the forests, or whether it was a supply chain company in the chain of custody side. But from personal experience, I would say don't overthink it. Don't be too ambitious. I've seen lots of mistakes as an auditor where companies get very excited and they get very ambitious and they set lots of goals, which can become a real nightmare when trying to manage those goals 2 or 3 years down the line. And I would say talk to your customers, find out what they want, and then talk to certification bodies and contact, if it's forestry, contact PEFC and ask all the technical questions that you need to understand, because knowing the standard and then making a very straightforward, simple plan to meet the standard And using your internal staff to do that is often the best way. I mean, you can use consultants, and certification bodies can be great at doing pre-assessments or gap analysis. But unless your own people understand it and can actually deliver it, then you might get the certificate, but then keeping the certificate is the hard thing. So getting it is relatively easy. Keeping it is the hard thing. And I often, as when I was an auditor, the first surveillance visit, the one which is 12 months into your certificate, that's the one which is the interesting one. And Juan's smiling because he knows this. So you get your certificate and you're very excited. 12 months later, your audit's very different because you've got to show all of your trading volumes, you've got to show all of your training records, your safety records. So just be prepared to put the hard work in the long run, not just at the beginning. So
I'm curious now about your point, Rob, and I also see that Juan, I think, also has experience in this. But do you see many companies that get certified and let's say the first year they just fall because they don't have the correct information? So let's say, what is the churn rate after 1 year, after 2 years? Do you see this to be a constant problem within certifications, within compliance?
You mean after 1 year to be being certified, or after 1 year trying to be certified?
After 1 year of being certified, like Rob was mentioning, right? The first certification is all okay, but the first year they start to have some problems. So I'm just curious, how many of those who get certified in general will be falling the first year, falling the second year? And is this a common trend, or is this a matter of exceptions?
I would say it's a common trend, and I think, or my experience is that most of them, they struggle the first year, first 1.5 year, or maybe first 2 years, until the entire system, the entire management system is working properly. The people is used to the new structure and to the new processes. I would say that's part of the game, I would say.
You see the same in forestry, Rob?
Yeah, I would just echo that. And I would say that the biggest factors are scale, complexity, and risk. So if you take an industry, for example, like the charcoal industry, which that's quite a low value product at the forest end of things. And quite a lot of charcoal comes from Africa and from other developing countries. And we all know that if we go to a filling station or a supermarket in Europe, you can pay less than 10 euros for a bag of charcoal to go home and have a barbecue. So when you look at that value chain, there isn't much money which goes all the way back to the forest. And so charcoal is also a very difficult commodity to manage in terms of how you turn wood into charcoal. So that's a high risk industry, and therefore companies who want to go into that industry and become certified, which is a very laudable aim, will often find 1 year later that they've got non-conformances being issued by the certification body. So it depends on the industry, it depends on the size of the company, and it depends on how much resources can be invested into that supply chain. So it's an interesting journey. It's not that people lose their certifications, it's just that they often have non-conformances to deal with in the middle of their certificate cycle.
Thank you, Rob. Thank you, Juan. We have another question from our audience. This one comes from Kahua World, asking, before discussing the legislation adopted by the European Union, what are the EU's ethical obligations in this context initially? Meaning, how can the European Union compensate for its responsibilities before imposing stringent conditions on others? I think they're touching back upon what you mentioned before, Rob, the EUDR. I know this is a very specific question, but do you have some thoughts? Because I have heard from some prospects and traveling around, meeting clients, prospects, meeting associations, cooperatives, that they're feeling like they are behind the requirements for the EUDR, and they're feeling like a lot is being asked from them, but maybe there's not enough, given back to them to comply to this. So what are your thoughts on this, Rob? I know that you've been familiar with many forestry companies importing into the EU or buying from the EU that need to be liable for the EUDR. So what is your take on this?
I'm going to give you a personal answer. I think this is a fascinating geopolitical issue. And if you look at rubber, for example, to make car tires, there are some predictions of shortages of tires in the European Union next year, or the price of tires going up by maybe 50%. So it's going to be really interesting 2025. There could be some big unintended consequences of EUDR, whereby countries and regions will switch their supply chains away from the EU to avoid having to comply with the European Union directive. And you could also see tit-for-tat tariffs or tit-for-tat actions. There's a lot of discussions going on at WTO and other levels at the moment on whether EUDR will be implemented on time. And of course, we have no evidence to say that it will be delayed. The EU is insisting it will start on time. But it's a huge challenge for every different supply chain associated with the forest risk commodities. At PEFC, we are pushing on. We are trying to be ready. We are trying to take everybody with us because we have to abide, by those regulations, and we have to encourage our family to be involved. But I think we won't really have the answer to that question until 2 years from now. But there could be some very strange unintended consequences of this regulation.
Thank you, Rob. I want to proceed with the next question for you, Juan. What are the common misconceptions about sustainability certification, and how can companies overcome them?
I would say the biggest misconception is at the beginning, when a company or client thinks that they are in a better or much better situation, they really are to go for the certification. And then they struggle to get the first audit, or they fall out because they are not fulfilling the request of the certification. And yeah, then it's, in my opinion, this is the biggest problem for the a regular company willing to get certified. The rest of the issues are manageable, are part of the certification process, I would say, and are possible to be solved. If, of course, you get from the beginning, you have a perspective which is not according the real situation of your company, then the problem is, let's say, a little bit more serious than expected.
Thank you, Juan. For you, Rob, I'm curious because last week I was walking around buying a few things from the store, and I see a lot of the products, especially in packaging and in paper, having the logo of PEFC or being mentioned on PEFC. So, what are some common misconceptions? Because at least in the cocoa industry, in palm oil, in coffee, I think consumers are a lot more aware of what Rainforest Alliance is. In the past, UTS, they're aware of fair trade. But what does PEFC, stand for, and what is a common misconception of what PEFC does and doesn't do?
Yeah, it's an interesting question. I think the whole forest industry, I'm not talking specifically about PEFC now, but the whole forestry industry around the world has come through an interesting journey in the last 20 years. Forestry is still viewed negatively by some people. Some people believe that cutting down trees is just a fundamentally bad thing. But attitudes are now changing, and people are seeing forests, especially well-managed forests, as the solution to climate change, as the solution to biodiversity maintenance. All sorts of social and economic benefits come out of forests. So we're seeing a huge pressure on forests all around the world. And what we're trying to do is get the message out that if you're buying logoed product, then you can be reassured that a large proportion of the fiber which went into that product is coming from, well-managed and sustainably managed forests. It's still a challenge because the reality is that when you see 70% on a claim, that means that 30% of the material came from a forest which wasn't certified, but it went through a whole lot of gateways to make sure that it was legal, and not fully certified, but at least okay to be mixed with certified material. So I think the biggest misconception is that for both FSC and PEFC, consumers don't understand the complexity behind the claims and the complexity behind the manufacturing processes. And that's something we have to work on. You know, we just have to make sure our brand is recognized as widely as possible. And also different regions of the world and different countries are on different speeds of journey on understanding sustainability at the consumer level. And, you know, and when I travel around the world, I see that, you know, just in terms of waste management or attitudes towards plastic. You know, in the UK, for example, now it's really hard to find a plastic cup in any restaurant and any retail outlet. All the cups are pretty much cardboard. You go to other countries and everything is still plastic. So it's an interesting journey for the whole world to be going on, you know. So
yeah, that's a great point, Rob. I wanted to continue asking Juan, what trends are you seeing in sustainability certification landscape, and how do you anticipate this will evolve in the coming years? Rob mentioned just now about the EUDR and the integration of some parameters of the EUDR with PEFC, core capabilities. We see that, of course, also with the RSPO and to some extent the EUDR as well requirements. We see kind of a combination of different verticals. Let's say what originally was limited to a scope of being more sustainable. We're seeing now human rights being added to the certifications. We're seeing water management. But I want to hear from you, Juan, since you have this broad view of the market, since you're engaging not only with certification bodies, but also with the private companies. Where do you see the certification landscape moving on? How do you anticipate this will evolve in the coming years? And last but not least, do you think there could be possibly some sort of certification fatigue at one point, that companies need to get 5, 10, 20 certifications to meet all the verticals that will comprise ESG or regulation? Thank you, Juan.
Well, I would say some companies already tell you about certification fatigue because they have the wall full of certificates and they say, and now my client is asking for one more certification. So I fully understand. I guess the trend now, and Rob would correct me, please. The trend now is more in the direction ESG, environmental social governance, sustainability certifications, where the entire certifications for environmental, for sustainability, certifications for social area, with the supply chain laws in Germany, in Europe, in the States, in UK, in France, and coming for more regions is making a big difference. It's a milestone, and also for governance, required also from the shareholders, from the companies. We see that the trend is in this way. Of course, at the same time, there is a trend that smaller sustainability certifications coming from some products, like for wood, they are more sustainability certifications, not only for forestry, but only dedicated for wood. You have now, I don't know, but maybe 15 certifications, sustainability certifications. 5 years ago, there were only half of the amount. Why? Because also the industries are requiring more details, more information about the sustainability of this product.
Thank you, Juan. Rob, how do you see this? Given your certification scheme, you will know a lot more. What's the future of PEFC? Where does your company want to evolve in terms of what you're asking? But overall, also, where do you see the certification landscape? Like Juan mentioned, actually, and it's a very nice point. We're seeing a lot more specific certifications, like one for rubber, one for essential oils coming from forestry. So do you think this would eventually kind of group into a certification like yours? Do you think that they will deviate into more unique certifications? Where do you foresee the market going in the next 3 to 5 years?
Yes, it's a fascinating topic. I think what's happened is the regulatory framework, as Juan was saying, actually was behind the voluntary certification sector, but now the regulatory frameworks are catching up, and in some cases going beyond, such as the UDR. So the voluntary certification schemes like ourselves have to stay relevant. So one of our big developments that we're working on now and into the next 3 to 5 years is what we call trees outside forests. So there's a huge area of agroforestry and mixed land use, especially in the economic south, but not just in the economic south, and also urban trees inside cities where there is a fiber resource, and there are also non-timber forest products which come from agroforestry, which we're going to bring into our certification system. So that in a way is us as a very big scheme expanding our range of products and services. But I go back to my point earlier, and I think that big data and technology is the future, and the certification scheme owners and standard setters like ourselves, I'm collaborating much more closely now with certification bodies. I had a meeting last week to start talking about joint projects on digitalization of auditing, because we need to move data through the system in a more efficient way. That will help contain costs, that will give better value and better quality auditing. And also we need to recruit more young auditors. So we need to make our industry an exciting place to be. And sustainability auditing, non-financial auditing, is a great career. You can travel, you can see the world, you can interact with lots of lovely people. So we need to get the next demographic of good auditors into our system. The average age of forestry auditors is 55, 60. So it's too high. And the trouble is, because sustainability as a topic has really expanded and taken off, we are competing with a whole range of industry which are taking these clever young people and giving them highly paid jobs. So that's a lovely challenge to have. So
Thank you. Very interesting insight, Rob. I have one last question for the session today for both of you. And is, how does GHG Scope 3 emissions traceability interact with the certification process? Are these, for some of them, they're being considered as part of the certification process. They're going to be a core to that. We see that the legislation in the EU may want to expand into carbon as part of the EU EUDR or as a subset of the EUDR. But in general, how do you see carbon accounting, another very important topic within sustainability, and traceability, another important point beyond sustainability, also dealing with human rights, dealing with, of course, not using forestry products from certain national parks or protected areas. So how do you see the confluence of these different, let's say, sustainability themes that are not specific to certification? How do you see the evolution of this one?
Carbon certification is starting to be mandatory. It's not anymore a voluntary certification, and is also valued and required now from the market, from the financial markets. So we are not talking that, it's nice to have. It's right now becoming to be a must-have. And this is a trend we see daily in the business from all kinds of industries.
Yes, Rob, what do you think on that? I know that the chain of custody is a very in-depth traceability, but how does GHG Scope 3 play within the PEFC or other forestry certifications? Do you think this is going to be eventually embedded, or do you think it's going to be kind of diverged at some point?
Well, there's three aspects to this. We have a carbon task force at the moment looking at all aspects of carbon. So on the forest management side, of course, what forests do is they can store carbon, and that's something that we're looking at quite closely. That trade in sequestered carbon has been through a rocky patch recently with some voluntary schemes, so we're treading quite carefully and we're thinking it through. On the chain of custody side, we specifically are now about to receive our RED 2 recognition. So we'll actually be running a woody biomass certification scheme. So that's very heavily involved in using wood and wood residues to generate heat and power. So that will be an addition to our chain of custody scheme. in the back end of 2024. But in the forestry sector in general, and we're not particularly involved in this as a standard owner, but it does come into some of the auditing in chain of custody. Lots of forestry factories and processes are already using, all the principles of making use of every part of the tree to generate sustainable power on their factory site. And there are lots of good news stories in very large sawmills and forestry producing factories as to how to make use of renewable energy and generate renewable energy. Some of the big forestry factories are actually generating energy from burning bark, for example, and then exporting that renewable energy to the grid. So forestry is a good news story all round in that journey. But as a scheme owner, we're looking to see where we go with this into the future.
Fantastic. Rob, Juan, thank you so much for your time. Thanks for our audience also for joining us during this call. I think we learned a lot of topics. I think we got a lot of insights to take from this, whether you're working with forestry products, with food and beverage. There's a lot to learn from this session. Thanks for everyone who participated. If you're more interested to learn about PEFC Control Union, please do not hesitate to visit their websites. You will find more information on the speakers on our LinkedIn page. And of course, if you are interested in hearing more about AgriTask, you can always book a demo and on our website, and one of our sales representatives will get in touch with you, and you can learn more about our certification management tools. Thank you so much, and have a great day.
Thank you.
Thanks, guys.
Thank you.